I'm Thomas, and these are the top 5 most frequently asked questions about sumps. What is a sump? A sump is basically a container of water that sits below your aquarium that's used to house a variety of filtration and other equipment your reef requires, so that you don't need to put all of that gear inside of or on the sides of your display tank, which keeps things looking much more attractive by hiding all of the gear underneath the stand. Sump designs can vary quite a bit. Some sumps are pretty simple, while others are much more complex, but ultimately they all work the same, and a sump all on its own doesn't do much at all, save for some mechanical filtration if it includes filter socks or a fleece roller. In order for it to work as a filter for your reef, you need to add other filtration equipment to it, like a protein skimmer, a refugium, or a media reactor, just to name a few examples. Once those other filtration elements are added, the sump becomes your complete filtration solution for your reef. How does a sump work? Okay, so in its simplest form, a sump works as a container of water sitting below the aquarium. A pump pushes water from that container up to the aquarium through a tube, and as the aquarium fills up with water, it rises until it reaches the overflow, which is essentially a hole in the aquarium for the water to exit. As the water flows through that overflow, it'll travel through another tube back down to the sump. For as long as the pump is running, this cycle continues, and if the pump is stopped, so will the circulation of water. It's really that simple. Some sumps have a lot of baffles and places for water to go once it enters the sump, but at the end of the day, water goes in, it gets pumped back up to the tank, and it just keeps going. What size sump is best? So I'm gonna give you 2 answers here. The popular answer and then the practical answer. I think the most popular answer that most reefers would agree on is that you should get the largest sump that you can fit in the space that you have. That is based mostly on the fact that a larger sump adds more water volume to the system, which means more dilution of waste. A larger sump also provides more space for equipment, which can make working with that equipment less cramped and easier to do. The reality, however, is that there are some sacrifices that you have to make when you do that. A larger sump is going to be a larger expense, and it's going to leave less room in your stand for other gear like external reactors, dosing containers, or controller boards and power bars. So, practically speaking, what size sump should you aim for? As long as the sump you're getting is around 25% of the total volume of your display tank or larger, you should have plenty of sump for your setup. If you want to go larger than that, it's totally up to you. What should you put in a sump? What you should put in your sump in terms of gear is gonna depend largely on what method of reefing you're gonna follow, so instead of giving you every single option under the sun, I'm going to give you a list of the most common setup that reefers find success with, starting with mechanical filtration. Filter socks, filter floss, or a fleece roller all help remove larger particulate and solid waste, and depending on the sump you choose, it will more than likely already have one of those 3 options already built into it. Next, a protein skimmer is a versatile piece of filtration that will remove all sorts of liquid and tiny particulate waste while also adding a lot of gas exchange. You can also add a refugium or a macroalgae reactor to provide some natural phosphate and nitrate control. A lot of reefers tend to add a media reactor for carbon or similar chemical media to their sump. You'll also want a heater for keeping the aquarium temperature stable, and obviously a return pump to push water from the sump back up to the tank. The return pump is the heart of the system, so make sure you get a reliable one. And that is just the short list of the most common gear. You could also add dosing tube holders, probes from an aquarium controller, a UV sterilizer, or any other gear that matches your reefing methodology. Sky's the limit. Is a sump better than a canister filter? When it comes to reefing, I would wager that the majority of reefers would agree that a sump is better than a canister filter for a number of reasons. A sump provides much more water volume and dilution. A sump holds all that gear that would otherwise need to be on the sides or inside of your display tank, which makes for a very clean and uncluttered looking aquarium. A sump has much more space for much more filter media as well. A sump and overflow system will also mean that the water level in the display tank won't change and that any evaporation will happen in the sump, so the display is always consistent, and you can put an auto top up on the sump where it's out of sight. A sump can also have the filter media swapped or cleaned while it's still running and circulating water. And also, a sump is arguably much more versatile and able to be outfitted with all sorts of different types of filtration in a multitude of ways to accommodate many different methods of reefing. A canister filter, on the other hand, is much more compact and easier to incorporate on smaller aquariums. A canister filter typically has a smaller upfront cost, and a canister filter doesn't require an overflow, making it easier to install on standard aquariums. Beyond that, canister filters just don't have many benefits over a sump and just really don't get much love in the reefing hobby. Sumps are by far the most popular option, definitely if you include all-in-one tanks with rear sumps. What is more surprising though is how many common mistakes people make with their sumps, even though sumps are so well known and widely used, especially since they are super easy to avoid. We've actually got the 20 most common sump mistakes and how to avoid them right here. Watch this before you buy a sump and save yourself from a lot of hassle.